shit together. So the Cold War had begun, and the battlefield was the human mind itself. In CIA offices, plans were already forming, code names were being assigned, and budgets were being approved. And soon, a chemist named Sidney Gottlieb would be handed control of a shadow kingdom where human suffering was the currency and consciousness was the target. So America was about to ask the question that should never be asked. What if we could break a person's mind, rebuild it, and control it like any other weapon? And the answer would destroy more lives than any bomb. And it would all be in the name of freedom. The Central Intelligence Agency was barely 3 years old when it decided to get into the mind control business. Created by the National Security Act of 1947, the CIA was supposed to be America's answer to Soviet intelligence, a shield against communist infiltration, and a sword to strike the enemies abroad. But what nobody mentioned in the legislative debates was how quickly protecting America would evolve into experimenting on Americans. So the groundwork began with projects that sounded like rejected comic book titles. At first came Project Bluebird, and that was in 1950, and it focused on special interrogation methods and making people resistant to enemy brainwashing. And the name suggested something peaceful, maybe even patriotic. But the reality involved drugs, hypnosis, and psychological torture designed to shatter human consciousness like glass. And Bluebird would eventually evolve into Project Artichoke in 1951. Because apparently someone in the CIA had a thing for naming horrific programs after innocent objects. So Artichoke would push further into darkness, testing whether hypnosis and chemicals could turn a person into a remote-controlled assassin. Think The Bourne Ultimatum, except with real people and no Hollywood ending. And the man tasked with running these horrific programs was a soft-spoken chemist named Sidney Gottlieb. And to his neighbors in suburban Virginia, he was just another government worker who grew orchids and stuttered slightly when he was nervous. But to his colleagues in the CIA's Technical Services Division, he was something else entirely. He was a brilliant scientist with an unsettling enthusiasm for exploring the outer limits of human suffering. And Gottlieb had even earned the nickname Black Sorcerer in intelligence circles. And I can tell you what, it wasn't because of his gardening skills. Okay, so the man had a gift for turning theoretical chemistry into practical nightmare fuel. He could discuss the psychoactive properties of lysergic acid, diethylamide. Sorry, it's hard. These words are hard. With the same clinical detachment other people would use to talk about the weather. And by 1953, the early experiments had proven one thing. Breaking human minds was definitely possible. But the question was whether America wanted to industrialize the process. And the answer would come from the top, CIA Director Allen Dulles. Or Dulles, or Dulles, I don't really care, he's kind of a piece of shit, so. And he was a man who understood power the way sharks understand blood in the water. Because he'd spent years watching Soviets expand their influence across the globe. And he was convinced that they were winning the psychological warfare game. Because at the end of the day, the government's just playing games with us. I should not talk as much. I feel like I'm gonna disappear. So when Gottlieb approached him with a massive centralized mind control program, Dulles, whatever, didn't hesitate. So on April 13th, 1953, he signed the authorization for Project MKUltra. And the name itself was typical CIA cryptography. MK indicated the program belonged to the Technical Services Division, while Ultra was a random word chosen to sound sufficiently mysterious. It sounds ultra stupid to me, but okay. But what wasn't random was the scope. Because this would be the most extensive mind control research program in human history. with a budget that would make most university research departments weep with envy. So Gottlieb's first move was pure genius, if you define genius as spectacularly evil, like Dr. Evil from Austin Powers. And he would convince the CIA to buy the entire world supply of LSD from Sandoz Laboratories in Switzerland for $240,000, which is roughly $4 million in today's money, which is f***ing crazy. So overnight, America had cornered the market of the most powerful psychoactive drug known to science. So just think about that for a moment. The same government who would later wage a war on drugs had just become the world's largest drug dealer. All in the name of national security. Thanks, guys. So with unlimited funding and unlimited LSD and unlimited government backing, Gottlieb began assembling his empire of shadows. So universities would provide the researchers, and hospitals would supply the test subjects, and prisons would offer captive populations who couldn't say no. Yeah. I mean, I don't care about the murderers and the you-know-whats, but everybody else, I mean, if you stole a candy bar, I don't know, it's inhumane. But that wouldn't even be the biggest problem, because America had plenty of citizens, and most of them had no idea what the hell was coming. So MKUltra was about to begin its reign of terror, and they had the full blessing of the United States government. Big shock. Because in the Cold War, apparently the only way to protect American minds was to destroy them first. So the irony was lost on no one except the people making the decisions themselves. So by 1953, Sidney Gottlieb had assembled something that would have made Dr. Frankenstein envious as hell. A nationwide network of human experimentation that stretched across more than 80 institutions and encompassed over 150 separate research projects. And the budget was staggering, $10 million, and that would equal roughly $87.5 million today. But money was just numbers on the ledger. The real currency of MKUltra was human suffering. So the program's objective was deceptively simple. Discover how to control human consciousness using chemical, biological, and radiological methods. And whether the subjects consented was completely optional. And whether they survived was completely irrelevant. So the chemical key to consciousness at the center of MKUltra's arsenal was a substance so powerful that amounts equivalent to 2 grains of salt could shatter a human mind. Lysergic acid dithylamide, which is better known as LSD, and that's what I'm gonna call it from now on because I ain't saying that shit again. So Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann first synthesized LSD in 1938. So for those of you who don't know, or for those of you who have tried it and still don't know, maybe you should know some history about it, so let's go over that real quick. So Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann first synthesized LSD in 1938. And he accidentally discovered its hallucinogenic properties in 1943, when he absorbed some through his skin. I can't even imagine how his day went, probably terrible. But the drug works by hijacking the brain's serotonin system, basically, binding to receptors that normally help interpret reality. And this causes the brain to process far more stimuli than usual, turning reality into a kaleidoscope of distorted perceptions where users might see music or hear colors. And under normal doses, an LSD trip might last from 7 to 12 hours, maybe even less, depending on how much you take. Not that I would know. But MKUltra researchers weren't interested in normal doses, and they would push subjects into uncharted territory with massive quantities that could trigger ego dissolution with the complete breakdown of personal identity. And at these extreme levels, subjects could experience seizures, respiratory problems, and dangerous hypothermia. But the psychological effects were even more devastating, because extended exposure could trigger flashback months or years later. And in some cases, hallucinogen persisting perception disorder, which is HPPD, a condition so severe that victims are unable to adapt to living with permanent, reoccurring trips. But for the CIA, these weren't side effects, they were features. Because the more LSD could break down the human consciousness, the more useful it became as a weapon. So Gottlieb's empire operated on a simple philosophy. Before you could insert a new mind into somebody's head, you first had to destroy the one that was already there. And this was not therapy. It was psychological demolition, and the techniques read like torturers' instruction manuals. Because these were massive doses of LSD that could keep subjects hallucinating for weeks on end. And they also used electroshock therapy, which was delivered at intensities that would have killed smaller animals. And then there was sensory deprivation. And they would use sensory deprivation so complete, it could break a person's grip on reality for days.